Hey guys, not wanting to waste too much time with the intro in this video. This is a list I played in a Super Qualifier, I think, on MTGO, basically because there's no paper magic going on. They've gone really ham on the online tournaments. I try not to play online tournaments too much just because they eat up a whole day, and while being in paper tournaments quite fun, you get to spend time with friends. Online tournaments can just drag and aren't really very enjoyable unless you're in the mindset. But I did feel like playing one, and apparently the top two of this tournament went to some players tour. I don't know what that is, but the prizes were good. The prizes, you got prizes all the way down to 128 players. So there was 129 players exactly. So just knocked us over at 8 rounds of Swiss. And I played this list, which is what I've sort of been playing around with in the current Lurrus dominated metagame. We've got a few changes from Breach meta. We've got 4 Icarids. I found main deck Dredge return, while nice and frees up a sideboard slot if you're trying to go 2 Dredge returns or 1 Dredge return. It basically takes a Dredge return out of your sideboard. I found having 4 Icarids is really good. Sometimes you have to bottom Icarids. Sometimes when you're slow dredging you just need to hit an Icarid. It's nice to have those options. We've got 1 Oxvagonus. It's pretty decent, especially with the sideboard that I'll talk about in a bit. We've got 2 Putrid Imps, 1 Street Wraith. 1 Street Wraith, it's just alright. I keep going in and out with 1 Street Wraith. It's alright. Right now in the current meta, I don't think it's especially good because there's like basically no surgical. And in fact, in a lot of my games against the Lurrus Delver decks, I just sided it out because of the way the sideboard's set up. Apart from that, the rest of the main deck's pretty standard. The sideboard's a big difference. This is for the current companion meta. This is what I think is a good sideboard plan for the deck. 1 Oko, this is sort of for any Miracles decks. 1 Wispmare, 4 Nature's Claims. Well, Leyline's really chilled out, it's not gone completely. You still want 5 answers to Leyline in my view. The reason for Nature's Claim right now is because Leyline's gone down a lot. The Chalice decks aren't around as much. People can be on lots of random stuff in the Lurrus decks, while most of them are on Crypts and Spell Bombs. Some of them are on Cages or Soul Guide Lanterns or all sorts of other stuff. They can have lots of Grave Hate, they can have little Grave Hate. They could be on Rips. Nature's Claim is just versatile and is good when you've not got a clue what's going on. I don't think I actually sided these in any of the matches I played in this tournament, but I think this is just a good sort of call for right now. Maybe if Lurrus gets banned and Leyline starts becoming a thing again with the Chalice decks, I'll go back to more Wispmares, but right now I think it's safe enough. The percentage points you lose against Chalice Leyline decks from potentially getting hit by both on the first turn is not so big of a deal right now compared to just getting randomly caged or randomly ripped and just needing to be able to sideboard. 1 Leyline of the Void. There is no graveyard decks right now. I think Garuda is not affected by Leyline. The ruling is quite strange. You think, oh, it exiles it, so Garuda can't reanimate it. Garuda doesn't care what zone the card's in, so Leyline of the Void's a replacement effect. Garuda will still animate the card even if it gets sent to exile. It just checks the cards that it flips. It doesn't matter what zone they're in. So Leyline's pretty much useless against the deck. Black Red Reanimator is just getting slapped by the Lurrus deck's recurring crits. Same with Dredge to an extent. The Lurrus deck's recurring crits is a really big problem for the deck. So I thought I could get away with one Leyline of the Void, and in fact I never used it the entire time. I do like having one. I did a big rant in my Yorion video about how much I like having one Leyline as just a card, especially in Dredge, a deck that doesn't draw cards normally anyway. The odds of you drawing it are very low because you basically never take a natural draw and you just want to see it in your opening hand and it costs no mana, so it's a really good fit if you want like one card that's just a piece of hate. I don't like having nothing. Your odds of hitting it, since Dredge will happily mull to 4, your odds of hitting it even with one copy aren't terrible with the London Mulligan. I just feel more comfortable having something there. Also, people see it when they dredge and they'll try and play around it, even if they might think, oh well, if they see none, they'll be like, oh, maybe he's got no ley lines. But if they see one, they'll be like, oh, maybe the rest of the ley lines are just in the bottom half of the deck and I didn't see them. And then you'll gain percentage points because they'll have like 5 ley line answers and you'll only have 1 ley line. I think it does a lot for just one sideboard slot. So I've still got 1 Leyline of the Void, even though I don't think Leyline of the Void's very good in the current meta. Ashen Rider, obviously. Archon of Valor's Reach with 2 Dread Returns. This is the plan against the Garuda decks and the Zirda decks. The problem that the deck currently has against those sort of decks is that Iona's not very good because most of the decks are colourless. So you could put against Garuda, it's not, Iona's not as bad, but against Zirda, Iona's really rather bad. Iona doesn't stop them from just playing out all of their artifacts, just getting a Karn, getting a lattice locking you, even if you've got like Iona on white or something to stop them casting Zirda. Alternatively, if they cast Zirda, seeing that you've got an Iona in the graveyard, then reanimating Iona does nothing. They can just top deck their Ballista or whatever. What Archon does is it lets you name artifact, and then that stops them from being able to fetch things with Karn or bridge you or cast a big ballista and ping you. Right now it just seems better. It's also good enough against decks like the Epic Storm. Naming artifact is generally correct, and then post board against Ant instance generally correct, but it's possible that sometimes it's better to name sorcery against both of those decks, but generally I name artifact against Tess and instant against Ant. The things you need to be careful about with this card is it's symmetrical, so if you reanimate it too soon and name sorcery, it locks you out of being able to cast Cabal Therapy. So that's something to be aware of. Also, it can't name creature, which kind of sucks. Like against non-leyline elves lists, sometimes you bring in Iona just to lock them out of the game on green. Archon can't do that. Archon's pretty useless. I mean, you could bring it in and name sorcery, but they can still glimpse through that and then just draw into their Crater Hoof with a glimpse chain. So yeah, I don't think it's especially good against elves, but it's much better against Zirda and Garuda because being able to name artifacts is much more valuable against them. Yeah, and then we've got the main Also, two Dread returns. This is sort of a thing that I was doing during Breach meta. I think this is the best plan for going fast against glass cannon decks like Garuda, like like Garuda, like Zirda. I don't think this is especially good against black-red, but against Garuda and Zirda, and anything else like Belcher, I think this is the best plan. Like playing at Spanish Inquisition or something stupid. What I do is I side out both Putrid Imps and 2 Icarids, because who cares about having a second turn if they kill you on turn 1, which both Garuda and Zirda can do a decent percentage of the time. And then I side in Archon of Valor's Reach, 2 Dread Returns and a Lotus Petal, and the plan is to mull any hand that doesn't do anything on the first turn of the game, and then dredge as much as possible, and sacrifice Narcomoebas to Cabal Therapies, get zombies, reanimate Hogak. Hogak helps hit the 3rd creature for Dread Return, then Dread Return Ox of Agonis if you haven't hit the Archon of Valor's Reach, and then use the Dread Return of the Ox and the 2nd Dread Return to hopefully hit the Archon of Valor's Reach, and then reanimate that with the 2nd Dread Return. It's fairly consistent, it's fairly efficient, or sometimes you just hit Ox and it lets you get enough therapies to just decimate their hand, and they literally have no draws left in their deck that will win them the game. Sometimes you'll dredge and you'll only hit 1 therapy and you will name wrong, but being able to reanimate getting 3 extra dredges and being able to reanimate an Ox of Agonis generally gives you enough stuff to be able to Cabal Therapy them enough times, even if you can't hit the Archon of Valor's Reach. But the plan is just to lock them out of the game with Archon of Valor's Reach, and it's pretty solid. It's pretty good. I think it's a great strategy for uninteractive decks. Against the Lurrus decks, finally, the bogeyman of the format right now, we've got 3 Leyline of Sanctities. I don't like 3. I think siding in 3 is quite awkward, and I don't especially like how the sideboarding maps out against any Lurrus deck where I expect they have those sort of things. We have like Crypts and Spell Bombs. We got 3 Leyline of Sanctities, and I take out a Breakthrough, an Icarid, and a Street Wraith. I take out Street Wraith because generally the other option would be to take out Thug. I think having a Thug is actually more useful a lot of the time than a Street Wraith, especially since they don't play Surgicals. Obviously if they do play Surgicals that changes things, but looking at most of the lists they do not. It's not ideal. Sometimes you can still lose even if you have Leyline of Sanctity. Sometimes you don't hit the Leyline of Sanctity and then they loop Crypt you. I don't like it, I don't want to have to do it, but the problem is that the Lurrus Crypt lock is so good that we basically can't beat it. It's very hard to get a Delver player to pop their Crypt. Generally it's a misplay unless you're literally going to lose the game from it to pop Crypt before you can replay it with Lurrus, because that just opens up the possibility of the Dredge player being able to play around the Crypt effect. Playing around Crypt's not very hard. Playing around a Crypt that comes back every turn is almost impossible. So that's what the 3 Leyline of Sanctities is for. Yeah, this video is going to be slightly different because I didn't record this at the time. This is going to be me going through the replays and talking through, and then I'll put up the sideboarding that I did between matches, and as far as I can remember, and explaining why I did that. And you lose a little bit because you can't really see pausing. Like sometimes I'll get a read based on when the opponent pauses, what's in their hand. Sometimes people bluff like that, but generally you can get a reasonable read. That's all lost due to the replay. It doesn't record pauses, so we're going to miss out on a bit of that, but hopefully it's still educational and interesting. Alright, so round one I'm against Zio Francone, who reveals a Lurrus as his companion. The 7's obviously not keepable, so I mull it. This 6 isn't what? The 6 isn't keepable either. It had just a looting and a street wraith, so I went to 5. This is keepable as a 5, and I put 2 on the bottom, keeping all of the loot spells in the Putrid Imp. I'm feeling reasonably confident, even though I don't have a Dredger. I assume he's on Delver. Yeah, I assume he's on Delver. So leads with Mishra's Bauble into Underground Sea, Scalding Tarn, Thought Seizes Me, takes a looting, so now I'm feeling a bit miffed. I draw Cabal Therapy for the turn, I play Putrid Imp. And this it resolves, so I'm feeling pretty okay about that. Then he plays Volcanic Island, Underground Sea, Dreadhorde Arcanist. So I draw, I play Looting for the turn. It gets forced, which kind of sucks. I Cabal Therapy him. I'm not sure what I named there, it doesn't show me because it doesn't have the game log. Frustratingly. What would I have named there? I'd have probably named Lightning Bolt or something like that, I expect. But he's got the second Dreadhorde Arcanist and the Brainstorm. So I just passed the turn. I'm feeling okay. I've got the City of Brass. Hopefully I can cast a Flashback Looting next turn, even though it costs a bunch of life. He casts his Brainstorm. Oh, I remember what I named actually now. I named Days. And in hindsight, I think this was a bad move because it really telegraphs that I've got a land in hand and makes them not want to Thoughtseize. So when he attacks, he flashes back the Brainstorm. And I think if I'd have named something else, maybe if I'd named Lightning Bolt, he might have Thoughtseized me, but I feel like naming Days just really telegraphs, because there's nothing else that really will get hit by Days if I've got like a 1-mana spell in hand. But by doing that, it means he's pretty sure that I have a land in hand, and he doesn't need to do that. So he Brainstorms. And I'm feeling like this isn't going very well. Especially with the second Dreadhorde Arcanist, I draw Icarus for the turn, Flashback Looting, which gets Dazed. And yeah, that's what I mean about this possibly having been a mistake, because if I'd have named something else and he Thoughtseized me, he wouldn't have Brainstormed, possibly, or he wouldn't have had the second Brainstorm and possibly hit the Daze. I mean, he did cast 1 Brainstorm, so the odds are still there that he could have hit it. Yeah. So he draws a Ponder, bolts by Putrid Imp, and I'm feeling like, okay, not off to a very good start here. Thoughtseizes me, because it would have been great to have the other card if I do draw something with Faithless Looting. So I return Icarid, I cycle, draw nothing useful. it gets Force of Negation, and I'm like, okay, this is basically game, because he can flashback Lightning Bolt, put me to 1, and then I can't cast anything. Plays a Caracas, plays a Lurrus, and I'm like, okay, this is Grixis Delver, and this game's over. So I just concede, and that was match 1. Game 2, match 2, whatever it is. This was my 7. I thought about this a lot. The problem with this 7 is that 1, having the ley line means you're going to have to take 2 draws before the Cephalid Colosseum becomes live, and 2, if the Lion's Eye Diamond gets countered, this hand does nothing. So I mulligan this hand, and I think this is definitely a mulligan against Delver. This was my 6, and I was much happier with this, so I kept it. And I bottomed the Narcomoeba because it's the only card that's useless in hand. I play Lion's Eye Diamond, it resolves. I play Mana Confluence. I just go for it because he probably has a Crypt or something, I don't know. And it resolves, so I dredge, and then I hit Ox of Agonis, so I cast Ox of Agonis, and I get an Ox. I have to exile a Dredger, but it's fine because we've got like 4 Dredgers in the graveyard. We hit Narcomoeba, sack the Narcomoeba to reveal his hand. His hand was Daze, Dreadhorde, Arcanist, Dark Confidant, Delver of Secrets, Volcanic Island, Pluto, Delta, Lightning Bolt. So I just flash back the Cabal Therapy. Losing Ox is kind of crap, but also I just want to take the problematic cards out of his hand. The card that I thought was most problematic here was Delver. There's an argument to be made for Lightning Bolt, but I just don't want him to be able to play a creature block and take my bridges. I want to be able to return the Ichorids and just swing with everything next turn. So I took the Delver here. And I considered casting the second Cabal Therapy, but I didn't. I just wanted to... and he just draws a Mishra's Bauble, plays it and concedes. So that was a really good second game. So game 3, this was my 7. Not very good. Obviously this is a mulligan, it does nothing. This was my 6, again, does nothing. This was my 5. I believe I keep this. And I probably bottom the Ox and the Narcomoeba. Yeah, I do. This hand would be better with a land, but you can't get everything you want. I'm hoping to draw land here. If I don't draw land here, we are in a lot of trouble, because I don't want to play this Lion's Eye Diamond out until we hit a land. And I'm also hoping he's kept a hand which is leveraging the whole spell bomb. I don't know whether he shuffled that or not. I can't see, sadly. There's no way to know because it doesn't keep the game log. I just passed the turn here, I expect. Yep. My opponent plays Dark Confidant. Draw Gemstone Mine. I'm like, thank God. Lion's Eye Diamond resolves. I'm happy to just go for it here because if it gets Force of Negation, I've got the second Faithless Looting. It does get Force of Negation, but I'm like, okay, maybe you've got Daze. Thankfully he doesn't have Daze, and this is looking really good. I hit the Hogak straight away. He casts Brainstorm, so I don't know whether he necessarily had a Spell Bomb or whatever in hand, because he probably would have Brainstormed it away. So I just return. Thankfully I hit the second bridge from below, so I Cabal Therapy him. I name, I think Force of Will, or maybe I named Days. I think I didn't name Force of Will. Okay, I didn't name Force of Will, maybe I named Lightning Bolt. It was probably correct there to actually name Force of Will, because if he had a Force of Will, it was the only card there that could counter, unless he had 2 dazes, it was the only card there that could prevent me casting the Hogak and then Cabal Therapying him again. So generally in these sort of situations, even if you think they don't have a Force of Will, or it's unlikely they don't have a Force of Will, it's generally correct to name Force of Will, just because you get super punished if they do have it, because you want to be able to have that Hogak and you don't want it, like, getting a Hogak's worth missing a Cabal Therapy like 9 times out of 10, unless maybe you're against like a Swords to Plowshares deck. But thankfully he didn't have it, so I just cast the Hogak, eat a bunch of stuff from the graveyard, and I don't flash back the therapy because I'd have to eat. If you look at what I'd have had to eat, I'd have to eat 1, 2, then I either have to eat, I wouldn't want to eat the bridges, and the Cabal Therapy would be gone because I'd have sat the Hogak, so I'd have had to eat 1, 2, then I'd have had to eat 3 Dredges, which means that I'd have only been able to return 1 Icarid the next turn. I didn't really see that as worth it in order to get rid of the second Dreadhorde Arcanist, so I just didn't do it. I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna have the 2 Icarids. It also prevents me from bricking on Dredges. You could make an argument that was incorrect. I just didn't really see myself losing this game, and bricking on Dredges and him somehow bouncing my Hogak seemed like the only way to do it. Having more zombies isn't too great against Lurrus, whereas having lots of Icarids, having a Hogak is pretty good, and then yeah, this turn it means I could just make zombies if I want. Hogak gets forced, which is fine. I should have named force, but I didn't. Instead I just basically eat everything from the graveyard. And my plan is just, I don't want to lose to a top decked Nihil Spellbomb or whatever, so I'm just going to make enough to easily lethal him in 1 attack. I'm not going to lose my bridges, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Maybe this playline was a bit weird, but it's generally good to just keep amassing zombies. Most of these decks can't beat it. They tend not to play any sweepers. They definitely don't have Plague Engineer. Here I do block because I'm attacking next turn, so I'm going to lose my bridges anyway. And I've got enough power on board already. He casts Lurrus, does a bunch of cantripping stuff. Oh, that was a bit quick, so he casts a Preordain post-combat, and he plays a Mishra's Bauble, replays Mishra's Bauble. But this game's basically locked up at this point, so I'm not going to go back and relook through that. This is lethal on board, I'm fairly certain, because the best thing he can do is block the Icarid and 2 zombies, and then he takes more than that even with lifelink. So yeah, we managed to claw back a lost game 1 into a win. Whether the Leyline of Sanctity did anything, oh yeah, he couldn't have Nihil Spellbombed me anyway. I don't really know what I was doing. I guess I was just like, well, I see the only way that I lose here is if he somehow manages to bounce my Hogak or whatever, so I want to keep the bridges around and get as many zombies as possible. I don't know, I saw no reason to attack there. I would just lose the bridges and not really gain very much, compared to just going turn step and getting like 4 more zombies. So yeah, maybe I played that a bit weird, but we got the win, so nothing's wrong if you win. You can say, oh yeah, well that was incorrect, but at the end of the day, if you win the match, that's what matters. Lots of people play very suboptimally, but as long as you play well enough to Win, it really doesn't matter. Really doesn't matter. A win's a win. Obviously you want to improve, but at the end of the day, if you win, you play good enough. Yeah, so we don't really know whether Leyline of Sanctity was actually very good, but you certainly feel safer with it there. And that was round 1. Round 2, and I am on the play. My opponent reveals Lurrus. This hand's a mull. You can Cabal Therapy yourself. The problem with that, especially against Delver, is they'll know exactly how to counter you. They'll know whether it's worth wasting you. For example, they'll know that if they counter the break, they'll know that if they waste me, then counter the breakthrough, they'll do nothing. Whereas if you were to just lead with the looting, they'll be like, well, I can waste him, but what if he's got a second land and a looting? That won't do anything. But it just maps out your hand. I really don't like it against Delver. I try to avoid it. Obviously, sometimes if you mull low enough, you have to take those hands. Yeah, I just didn't like this hand against Delver very much. Also, the Cephalid Colosseum does nothing if they waste the City of Brass. This is just a very weak hand to Wasteland. It's also a very weak hand to a Force of Will. So I mulled it. This hand is more interesting because it's got 2 Cabal Therapies and 2 Lion's Eye Diamonds. He's probably on Delver. The advantage, having 2 Lion's Eye Diamonds is very strong against Delver, especially with 2 Cabal Therapies, because they help to take the dazes out of their hand. So I actually keep this. Also, it's got a Dredge. So while yes, we do have to Cabal Therapy ourselves, we have to Cabal Therapy ourselves after discarding 2 Lion's Eye Diamonds. Also, the fact that we don't have to crack either Lion's Eye Diamond, yes, it's a bit slow, but generally this is good enough against Delver. If he counters a Lion's Eye Diamond, that's fine. This is only really bad if he's got 2 Force of Wills. If he's got 2 Force of Wills, whatever. I think this is a pretty good keep, especially since if he forces the Cabal Therapy, we've just got a second Cabal Therapy. Then if he forces a second Cabal Therapy, like some people don't like forcing Lion's Eye Diamond, especially when you play it out first. They think, oh, maybe he's on Storm or something, and they want to force the payoff. Of course, generally it's Dredge that leads like this, but we do it just so we hide the fact it's Dredge, because it's really obvious once you play Mana Confluence that it's Dredge. So we do that, and our opponent does some stuff. Players turn a bit quick. He does Mishra's Bauble, he does Delver, so I'm like, okay, this is the Grixis Lurrus Delver rather than the Jeskai Lurrus Delver, or it might be the Bug Delver, but it's definitely not the Jeskai one. So we Dredge, obviously, and we get really lucky. This is great. I can't remember exactly what I do here. Yeah, I think I therapy him, but I'm not sure exactly what I name. Probably Force of Will, because we can play around a daze simply by just passing the turn, provided he doesn't have a Wasteland, which he does, but he has neither. Maybe I named daze, but I think I'd have named Force of Will there. So we know the coast's clear because his hand is no interaction. And I'm just going to play this bit a bit quick, crack, do the other one. And we don't actually hit anything very good here, and our opponent's hand's actually acceptable, but they scoop anyway. They know there's a Hogak coming next turn. Yeah, so that was the first game, pretty easy. We also know that this is now Grixis Delver, so this is the same matchup we got round 1. Start of game 2, this is a mull, it does nothing. So this is an interesting hand. I think I'd probably mull this. I might keep it. I feel like I'd probably mull this. Yeah, I do. This is even more interesting. If you draw any land, and it doesn't even have to be a gold source, it's acceptable. I'm not sure whether I kept this or not. I feel like I probably would on a mull to 5 keep this, just because it's got the white ley line. Yes, I do keep it, and it's got 2 dredges. But I'm not feeling happy. But going to 4 with it just losing to looped crypts or whatever. So the fact that he opens Caracas knows 1 that he can't daze us, 2 that he probably has some sort of interaction, because otherwise he wouldn't lead with Caracas. So maybe the Leyline of Sanctity just stopped him playing out his spell bomb, because it's better to just keep it in hand for Brainstorm. So this gives us an opening to cast the Lion's Eye Diamond. If he'd have led with an island here, we wouldn't be able to, because obviously we risk it getting dazed. So that gives us more likely to resolve, because the longer we wait, the more likely he is to be able to counter up into a force. So that was very fortunate for us. Opponent plays Wasteland, so yeah. We draw Lotus Petal, and I'm willing to just go for it here. Maybe he has a force, but we're protected from whatever, and he does have a force. I'm surprised he didn't force the Lion's Eye Diamond, but hopefully he was hoping to get us like this. Sometimes it works. So we dredge quite nicely, hitting an Archimedes straight away. I'm not going to use it for Cabal Therapy because there doesn't seem to be too much going on here. We had a second Archimedes, and I think I might fire off a Cabal Therapy here on something like Ponder or Brainstorm. Yeah, and I do. I'd probably name Brainstorm there then, if the but in hindsight it was probably right to name Ponder. So his hand is Ponder, Fatal Push, and then he just drew a random card for the turn, we don't know. I think I might sack this name Ponder here. Yeah, in hindsight it would have been better to name Ponder than Brainstorm, but I think I named Brainstorm. That was a mistake. Ponder's better to name because obviously he'd have to, if he drew a fetch, he'd have to crack the fetch, then he risks Brainstorm locking himself. And we take the bolt out of his hand, and he draws a Nihil Spell Bomb, which of course is stopped with by our Leyline of Sanctity. So his hand at the end of the game was a bunch of cards he can't cast. And the Leyline of Sanctity actually did work that game. It's good that he showed us that, because it knows we're not going crazy. Round 3 we're against Bob Jackson, who's also revealed Lurrus like every other of our opponents so far. That was a mull because it only had 1 loot spell, and we are against Delver. This is a keep because it has a Lion's Eye Diamond, it has a Putrid Imp, and it has something else. Obviously it's got no dredges and it's got no loots, so it's not ideal, but I highly prioritise Lion's Eye Diamond hands, so I keep this. If it gets wasted, it's not the end of the world. We don't have to play out the Cephalid Colosseum until we draw a Dredger, and then we can still use it with the Lion's Eye Diamond. So, well, I almost passed the turn by mistake there. Gets forced, which is fine. We play out Putrid Imp, so it kind of sucks that that got forced, because that means that our Cephalid Colosseum is now a bit more useless if it gets wasted. But we do have a Bridge and a Cabal Therapy, so we're not doing nothing here. Opponent plays Mishra's Bauble, and Mishra's Baubles as I'm actually much more afraid of Urza's Bauble, because them seeing what's on top of our deck's irrelevant most of the time. So drawing Careful Study here is very good. I'll play out the Cephalid Colosseum, and I'll play it out to a play around days, and then I cast it off of the Cephalid Colosseum just in case we draw a looting or whatever. Yes. And we draw really well. We draw a Grave Troll and we draw a Cephalid Colosseum. So this is good because this protects us from Wasteland on the Cephalid Colosseum. We still have another follow-up. And we pass the turtle, we swing for 1. And then I fire off the Cabal Therapy here because there's no reason not to. I think I named Dreadhorde Arcanist. Oh, he brainstorms in response, and then I'm like, what could be in this hand? I think I named Dreadhorde Arcanist. Oh, no I don't. What did I name? Brainstorm maybe? Lightning Bolt? Probably Lightning Bolt. I can't remember exactly what I was thinking at the time. I'm not too afraid of Dreadhorde Arcanist, it's just what sort of cards could be in their hand after they cast a Brainstorm. Dreadhorde Arcanist and Mishra's Bauble. So his hand is now that. Bauble trigger, we dredge. Grave Troll, we hit really well. This game's pretty much over at this point. We just discard the Grave Troll, crack the Colosseum, end the game. There's pretty much nothing he can do. Cephalid Colosseum's a really good card. We're hitting straight gas, so he's got Force of Will, so I'm going to sacrifice the Putrid Imp to Cabal Therapy. Take his Force, I'll attack first. And then if he doesn't scoop, I'm just going to make a bunch of zombies, and that will end the game. Take every card out of his hand. This game's over, so I'm just going to let it autoplay. So, sack Putrid Imp to Cabal Therapy, name Force of Will. He's got a daze, so he can actually daze us here, which is somewhat annoying. But he doesn't daze us. Not dazing us there was just a mistake, honestly, and then dazing that makes no sense. The correct thing to daze would be the Hogak there, because then we wouldn't be able to... I don't know, that was just a straight up mistake, because if he dazed us there, we were actually in not too great of a spot. I mean, we were in a decent spot, but if he gets rid of our bridges, I mean, we're still going to win, because it's game 1, but yeah. Our opponent made a little bit of a misplay there. Yeah. So game 2, he's on the play. I mulligan that hand, it didn't do anything. I mulligan this one again because it loses to Force of Will. I'm feeling like, oh, hopefully my 4's good. My 4 is not good. My 4's really bad. I mean, it's somewhat keepable. It's probably better than going to 3 just because it's got a Lion's Eye Diamond, a land and a Dredger. So I assume I keep this. So our opponent's gone to 5. Oh, I actually, oh, okay, that was a 5 I mulled. Okay, that makes more sense. So this is a 4. This is a really good 4 actually, because it's got Ellie, it's got the 4 best cards. So I think I bought both the therapies. Yeah, I think about this. Oh, but I keep one of the therapies. Okay, that makes sense because I want both only 2 therapies left in the deck. Oh, actually, okay. Yeah, I bomb all of that and just keep the loot spells. That makes a lot of sense actually, because that means that if Lion's Eye Diamond resolves, I draw a Dredger, I just win through Force of Negation. That makes complete sense. This also lets me dig for a Dredger, so yeah, I agree with that. Even with 2 therapies on the bottom, this is the best thing to do. Past me is smarter than future me. So he mulled to 5, just goes land pass, so I assume he has some form of counter spell or something. This generally tells me there's a spell pierce, but let's see what happens when I cast Lion's Eye Moment. It resolves, so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go for it. Maybe you've just got a force of negation. He might have surgical, but I don't think that's really a thing that these Grixis Lurrus Delver decks play, so I'm just going to go for it. And I dredge pretty decent. I mean, I don't brick, so that's always good. And I'm expecting that this looting gets dazed, but it doesn't get dazed, so I'm like, okay, what's in his hand? That's very strange. The only thing that I can think of that he'd keep is a Dreadhorde Arcanist. After mulling to 5 and having 0 interaction and not having any grave hate, he must have like Dreadhorde Arcanist or something and just not be wanting to go lower and hopes to draw off the top. Good stuff. So he reveals his hand. It is just a bunch of lands and a Dreadhorde Arcanist. Very strange. I'd have definitely gone to 4 there, but I don't play Delver, so who am I to judge? So I'm feeling pretty confident this game. Swing with everything. Next turn he can play Lurrus, but I'm not too fussed about that. He drew a Mishra's Bauble though, which is probably one of the best draws he had in that situation. So he's lost that, and he's top decked a Badlands. So we know his hand is 2 lands and 2 cards we don't know. The good thing is that we have we're able to cast Hogak, even though Hogak doesn't do very much here. Though I probably don't cast Hogak unless we draw a Therapy. I expect we just swing and we try to trade with the Lurrus. I'm happy to lose the bridges in order to kill the Lurrus. Oh, I just swing with the Echorig because I don't want to lose the bridges. This is fine too. I guess I'm thinking, how can I lose here? And that's I lose my bridges, and then he just draws. Happened to have drawn a crypt or something straight off the top is my thinking. So I'm like, okay, because that's the only reason that he'd want to trade the Lurrus for a zombie, right? If he chopped at something like a crypt, and then he can get rid of a zombie, and I'll get no zombie swimmaker in at the end of turn, and then I'll just be left with one zombie and 2 Narcomoebas, and that's pretty easy for Delver to beat. So obviously he doesn't want to trade the Icarib for the Lurrus. That's not very good. This way also means that I get to cut him on mana next turn by casting Hogak, because yes, Hogak's not very good against Karakas, but it's free. And it keeps them off of a land, which gives them one less thing to do next turn. So it's generally good to just cast Hogak anyway, even if it just gets bounced. Also, a Hogak in hand is worth 2 in the yard, as they say. So he did actually draw the Nihil Spellbomb. So here, that play that we made last turn is actually paying off for us. Because what it means is that if we had done that attack, we'd have probably been in a not very good situation, because he'll be on like 4 cards or something ridiculous. Yeah. So he has to bounce and then he has to crack, and if he wants to draw with the Spellbomb, he can't play anything else this turn. So doing that was actually desirable. So we will swing with everything here. There's like no reason not to. I expect he won't trade. No, he has to, sorry, he has to block here, because if he doesn't hit, this is exact lethal, which is really good for us. Because we would not be in a very good spot if he could just swing back. But that does nothing, so we just win the game there. You see how we were able to tax him on mana there by because if we didn't play the Hogak, he would have been able to cast the Nihil Spellbomb with the Caracas, which would have given him an extra mana, which would have potentially allowed him to cast Lightning Bolt. Then if he was able to cast Lightning Bolt, then that would have changed the combat math on the next turn. And then a whole host of bad things could have happened there. We could have very easily lost from that situation since he got that spell bomb. But it's just about playing around the things that you lose to in those sort of situations. So like swinging with just the Icarid, it lowers his life total, but doesn't lose our bridges like swinging with the zombies would have, which protect us from grave hate. So yes, that was actually a pretty decently played game by myself, even if I do say so. In hindsight, so yeah, that was round 3, and I'm feeling pretty confident. We played against 3 Grixis Lurrus Delver decks, and we've beaten all of them, which feels pretty good. We feel like we made a good meta call in this inbred Lurrus meta. Right, so round 4 against Jupiter Brando. He doesn't reveal a companion, so I expect there's something fishy going on. This hand is close. If it had a Dredger, I'd probably keep this. In fact, I'd almost definitely keep this if it had a Dredger. But it doesn't, so I expect I probably mold this. Oh, I actually kept this. Okay, I guess I thought maybe that since it was no companion, that it might be something unfair. And if it's unfair, then this is actually a good hand. All I need to do is just draw a Dredger. Oh, I guess the other way of looking at it is, when you think about how many outs of good cards we have to draw in this situation, any land, any Dredger, any blue loot spell. So basically, Careful Study's an out, any land in the deck is an out, any Dredger's an out. So that's basically half the deck. So actually it's probably a keep because it's just a turn 1 if you draw like half of the deck. So yeah, probably is correct to keep there, and we draw Careful Study, so that's really good. And we draw this, which is also really good. I expect I'll probably just try and go off here because I don't want him to untap and crop rotation me, and he will just wasteland my Cephalid Colosseum anyway, so there's no point wasting time here. So I just crack. We got 2 looting, so unlike my odds, we hit the Ox as well, so that's really good. We basically just dredge the whole deck here. Just put this on autoplay. Trying to count cards, I needed to I didn't want to exile anything that wasn't ideal, so I wanted to keep all the dredges. Not that it especially matters, but there was no reason to exile any of the black creatures. So they did have crop rotation. They had was crop rotation, Caracas, Sylvan Library, Maze of Earth. We just go nuts here. I don't even bother bringing back Ox for the next time. I saw no point. I'm just trying to make enough zombies such that oh, maybe I oh, okay, I didn't. Yeah, and that was game 1. He's fast game, rewarded for our slightly weird keep, but pays off. Game 2. So this hand is a mulligan against lands, I think. It's weak to wasteland. While it has a Cabal Therapy to name crop rotation, it doesn't do anything else. I have to note another important thing here. I was aware before this tournament from looking online on Twitter, because if you a lot of people, especially in these MTGO tournaments, they will play lists that people post on Twitter, and they will play things that they think are like new, something a bit different to try and get an edge. But the problem with that is that everybody knows your list, because it's just on Twitter. So, for example, if I'm playing against something a bit weird, I know that I can go to certain Twitter individuals' pages, such as like White Faces, or Bob Hwang, or Julian Nab's Twitter account, and they probably retweeted someone that's probably playing their weird list that is around. Or you go to whoever, like, this guy's playing lands, just find any of the notable MTGO lands players. They probably posted some funky list. So he had Tropical Islands. I'd seen on Twitter that someone had posted a list that was basically no Marit Lage combo, and basically no grave hate in the sideboard. Like nothing. It was the entire deck was just teched to beat these Lurrus Delver decks. In fact, I think the designer of the deck posted, he was like, just rely on the Lurrus Delver decks to beat all of the combo decks for you, and then just beat all the Lurrus decks, which is a strategy, I guess, except for the fact that Dredge happens to prey on both when you've got no grave hate on the sideboard. So yeah, the deck sort of relied on Field of the Dead. I was aware that the deck had Primeval Titans in the sideboard as well, so that's something to be aware of. Basically, the only thing I had to be afraid of here is crop rotation into Bog. Oh, and they had 2 Tabernacles. That was the other thing. They had 2 Tabernacles in the deck. So I multi this 6, and I keep this 6, I think, because this is like an acceptable hand. The opponent mulls to 6, just because it's got Leyline, and I know they've got no other grave hate, so yeah, my opponent leads with Ghost Course. My opponent actually plays this game very well, but I believe we get quite unlucky, and we never hit. So he destroys his own land so that he can get out an Uro into the graveyard, because he didn't have enough green sources, and we haven't played any lands. So we're basically just looking for a Dredger here, and we hit one, which is great. So we just go for it here. We know we don't have to live in fear of crop rotation, but we brick on Dredges for the very first Dredge. We hit 2 Narcomoebas, but we brick on Dredges, which really hurt us, and we didn't hit a looting either. I believe we still have Ox in the deck, so that was a bit unlucky. So our opponent's crop rotations into Tabernacle, which sucks. But we've got 2 Icarids, so we just start dredging. We do have, obviously, we've got what do you call it in the deck? What's the card we've got in the deck? We've got Ashen Rider in the deck, so I'm just like, okay, let's just dredge for Ashen Rider. So we swing with Icarids. There's a lot of passing. We return some Icarids. I think I opt not to return Icarids on some turns, just because we're low on dredges in the graveyard. We only have Stinkweed, Imp, and Golgari Thug. Yeah, this turn was a bit risky. We could have bricked on dredges, but luckily we didn't. I think I make a misplay here by not returning Hogak. Yeah, I should have returned Hogak. There was no reason not to. It's not like we're low on cards in the graveyard, and I think it actively screws us over. Because if we return an Icarid, Yeah, because when Hogak dies, it gives us a Butcher Blow token, but it ended up not mattering there. But I think I do the same thing later. I think that actually did matter. That's something to be aware of. Even though Hogak just dies to Tabernacle, sometimes it can give you an extra zombie token, and then that extra zombie token can allow you to Dread Return. So obviously our opponent just blocks. Uro is quite hard to deal with because obviously it gives them life and it ramps them, and it's just a 6/6. And it draws them cards. It just does a lot. It's hard to beat. It's basically Jace the Mind Sculptor in terms of things that you can lose to. Like, it's not something that's like actively good against the deck, but it can just provide them so much card advantage that it's basically impossible for you to beat. Yeah, so here I think is when I should have brung back the Hogak, because swinging here doesn't actually achieve anything, whereas we're getting quite low on cards in the deck, and if we bring back Hogak, that means that next turn we can exile Putrid Imp and the Hogak itself, because we're basically on, we need to Dread Return like this turn or else we lose. We could have also blocked the Uro here, but not that it matters. So they're just doing a bunch of stuff with Life from the Loam. I'm playing this quite quick just because nothing much is really happening. They're just doing Loam shenanigans. So we brick on Dredges here, which kind of sucks. I target the opponent. Oh, I think I was just wanting information. I think I just accepted that the game was over. Yeah. Because there, if I'd have returned the Hogak, I'd have had a zombie there, and then I could have exiled the Hogak. Because what I did was I exiled the Hogak and the Putrid Imp, but I only had 2 creatures, and I had to exile the Hogak and the Putrid Imp because I had no other black creatures except the Dredger, and I needed the Dredger to hit the Ashbrider in the deck. So that was a mistake. What I should have done was the turn before, return the Hogak instead of swinging, and then when that died to the Tabernacle in my upkeep, I would have gotten a zombie token and then exiled the Hogak, and then that would have given us 3 creatures because we got Dread Return and we got Ashen Rider. Still, I don't think we're winning at this point. I think the game was pretty much lost because they would just get zombies with Field of the Dead, and we don't have enough black creatures left in the deck to actually kill them because they've got how much life they've got. With Field of the Dead as well. But yeah, that was a mistake by me. Alright, so game 3. Not sure if I keep this hand or not. Let's see. I think I would keep this, just because you could name crop rotation. And indeed I do. So the plan is just to Cabal Therapy them name crop rotation, because that's basically the only card I'm afraid of, and just hope to draw a Dredger. If we get Wastelanded here, that's actually actively good for us, but if not, we can just play Putrid Imp. So the hand was crop rotation, Force of Vigor, there we go. So they brought in Force of Vigor to deal with the Leyline of Sanctities because they saw it in the last game. That's also why I opened with Cabal Therapy and didn't play out the Lion's Eye Diamonds there, because of being afraid of Force of Vigor. It's some small thing, like normally you just run out the Lion's Eye Diamond, but you need to think, well, if I'm going to Cabal Therapy them, they might have a way to remove this, so there's no point playing it out until after the therapy. It's small things, but it ends up adding up, because we could have got easily blown out if we play out both the Lion's Eye Diamonds first there, which is an easy mistake to make, I think. So they play Exploration, they play Misty Rainforest. So we know all the cards in their hand. Oh wait, no, we don't know one of them. So we get fortunate and we draw Grave Troll. I'm not going to play out the Shuffling Colosseum here because I don't want it to get wastelanded. My hope is that next turn he taps out, so we don't even have to be worried about crop rotation. But if he does, we're still okay, because we'll discard Grave Troll and upkeep, and they probably won't crop rotation us there. And then after we've drawn, we can sack Putrid Imp to Cabal Therapy and name crop rotation. Oh, he has Ghost Quarter, okay, so, but that's fine for us, and then plays Tabernacle, which is also fine for us. So we're going to lose Putrid Imp, but that's fine, because we can still discard to Grave Troll with the trigger on the stack. And then we're just going to go off. Tabernacle's somewhat annoying, but we should be able to find Ashen Rider, hopefully. I sided out the Ox this game. I forget why. I'll have a look at the... So there's no Ox. Oh, I think I know why. Because he had 2 Tabernacles, I brought in the second Dread Return instead. It was tight, but yeah, just because he had 2 Tabernacles, he had a lot of stuff that needed exiling, like Field and Uro. I thought I wanted. Also, last turn I got somewhat screwed over by the Ashen Rider being too low in the deck, so I just thought it might be useful to have the second Dread Return. Ends up not really mattering here, because we just go off now. It was actually correct to crack looting here. I think I thought I had an Ox still in the deck, and we end up bricking on Dredges. That was a mistake by me. I should have just looted first, but it ends up not mattering. Because we've already hit Ashen Rider and Dread Return there and there. Also, for some reason, the chat log seems to have decided to start working now in the replays. I don't know what's going on with it. It seems to come and go as it pleases. So I think I just named crop rotation, just because I don't care about the Force of Vigor in his hand. And then I just make a bunch of stuff. I considered sacrificing the Ashen Rider to get rid of the exploration, but in the end I didn't bother. And the opponent draws his card and scoops, because this is lethal on board, with an Icarid in the graveyard. Yep, so we are currently 4-0 undefeated after this round. Start recording, so I am against the streaming Jedi Master, Mr. Legacy Council himself, Arkan. He is a very good player. Normally he plays Dredge in big events. I'm on the play, so I'm quite happy with that, given that he often plays Dredge. However, what he then does is he sends me a message. But he reveals Lurrus, so I know that he's not on... I assume he's on Lurrus Delver. In fact, what I do is I go to his stream and I check what deck he's playing, and I see that yesterday he was playing Jeskai Lurrus Delver. And that allows me to basically know his entire 75, which really helps me out in the tournament. It's a bit cheesy, but it is what it is. Everyone does it. I expect a lot of people search up my decks, even though this exact list I'm playing wasn't in any of my deck dumps. I expect a lot of people search me up and notice that I'm playing Dredge, so I just play out all my stuff. I capped this hand, by the way. What was it, my 7? Yeah, it's a good hand. I named Force of Will. Yeah, that's the reason why I kept the hand, because I really wanted Lion's Eye Diamond to resolve. I was like, well, if I have Lion's Eye Diamond, I basically just win this game. And chances are he's got Force of Will. He also had Force of Negation, which was awful for me. However, he didn't want to Force of negation the Lion's Eye Diamond, presumably because he thought, well, I can just force a negation the Faithless Looting. And also he's very low on cards, especially after I Cabal Therapy the Force of Will, because he'd have to lose his Delver, and then he'd just have a Dreadhorde Arcanist and 2 lands, which is not a very good hand. So I know he top-decked Mother of Runes for the turn. Oh wait, he only had 1 land, so I know his exact hand. He just forced negations to the Careful Study, which I expected was going to happen, which I'm completely fine with. So his hand is just Dreadhorde Arcanist. So I'm drawing really well here. I draw a Faithless Looting, which is just amazing, and I draw 2 Thugs, which I'm very happy about. So I'm going to Lion's Eye Diamond crack first, I believe, because unless he's drawn Spell Pierce, I mean, I can even pay for Spell Pierce if I really wanted to. But yeah, that ends the game pretty sharpish. Quick game 1, generally how things go. So I look up his list and I see that the only card that he's running in his sideboard is 1 Soul Guide Lantern. So because of that, I don't even bother bringing in the Leyline of Sanctity, so they're just a dead card, which really helps out in the matchup. I sideboard slightly differently. I think I just side out 1 Breakthrough and bring in 1 Lotus Petal. So this is my seven, which I don't like. I mull this. My 6 I don't like either. My 5 I don't like, so I go to 4. My 4 I don't especially like, but I think I keep this just because it potentially does stuff. Like, you can Cabal Therapy yourself and then hopefully he doesn't have a Wasteland. But I'm not feeling very confident this game. But hopefully if I draw like a god, maybe I can pull something off. He kept his what did he kept? He kept a 7, yeah, so I'm not feeling very comfortable here. But drawing a Lion's Eye Diamond is absolutely amazing because that can try and force out a Force of Will if he doesn't have a Spell Pierce. And it resolves, which I'm very happy with, which makes me think he's got Daze or something. So I play the Cabal Therapy into the Daze. If it gets dazed, it gets dazed. I'm okay with it. Hopefully it doesn't get dazed. So I'm quite happy that that resolved, but now I'm a bit like, well, what's in your hand if you're playing like this? Or maybe he just wants the information. But Cephalid Colosseum's so good here. So he plays a Ponder into a Mishra's Bauble and a Wasteland Wall. So for my turn I dredge Stinkweed Imp. And I'm feeling very confident here. I'm like, okay, this is really good. Chances of hitting a Dredge are pretty good here. With the Cephalid Colosseum and Stinkweed Imp. It would have been nice to keep the land around, but we brick on Dredges, which really sucks. Because I was like, oh yeah, we've got this game in the bag now. After a pretty shaky start, a Malta 4, I thought we had this, but yeah, we end up bricking on Dredges, which happens, it's the deck. If you don't like that, play a different deck. It's got a fail rate. You want to play a deck that always consistently doesn't fail, you can play Ant or something and then die to ad nauseum flips. I just return the Icarid here. I'm hoping to hit a Narcomoeba and a bridge, but we don't hit. We hit the Narcomoeba, but we don't hit the bridge. But this is fine. It should allow us to hopefully, provided we don't brick on Dredges, we can hopefully get a Hogak down later. I think I name Swords to Plowshares here. He's got 2 Dazes, a Meddling Mage, and a Pyroblast. And that ends up being important, that meddling mage. This ends up being quite a long drawn out game. It's a very interesting game and Arkham plays it very well. I think the fact that he's got a lot of experience with Dredge himself helped him out here. So I was solidly on him just playing Meddling Mage, naming Cabal Therapy, which would have been my play, but he doesn't, and I'm not entirely sure why. I don't bother Cabal Therapying here because he can just daze it, it's a waste of time. And we got lucky because we didn't brick on Dredges there, that was a big concern. So he reveals Ponder, casts Ponder. Sadly I don't know whether he shuffled or kept, which always sucks. So I know his hand's these three and a random card, and he doesn't have a Lurrus in hand obviously. So I'm really hoping we can hit a bridge here, because we can force cast a Hogak, even though Hogak doesn't do much versus Caracas. But he has the plough for the Icarid, which really sucks because it ruins our plans. But we swing for one, and then what we're going to do is we're going to sack, because I want to get that Meddling Mage off the board, because it can turn off our Cabal Therapies and make it very difficult for us to cast a Hogak. We also only have 2 Icarids left in deck, so we're going to have to sack. So I sack the zombie to the Cabal Therapy to get Meddling Mage, because I want to be able to cast my Cabal Therapies. Or what the other thing is, he can Meddling Mage on Hogak as well. The way I see myself winning this game here is I dredge into another bridge and a Narcomoeba, and then I sack to Cabal Therapy. I'm able to loop some Cabal Therapies, but actually I only have 1 Cabal Therapy left and it's already in the graveyard, so with the Caracas that's probably actually not that good of a plan, but I did not want to deal with the Meddling Mage. But it turns out Lurrus can just recast Meddling Mage, so maybe that was just a mistake. But I think it was correct to sack the Narcomoeba there to try and get some of the cards out of his hand, but we're not in a very good spot here unless we can hit some Icarids. So he's going to start looping baubles, drawing lots of cards. And we dredge into an Icarid. We're getting quite lucky on the dredges here. He plays a land, he recasts Meddling Mage. I think he names Cabal Therapy, yeah, so that was what I was afraid of, but actually Hogak's probably more of a problem here. So I don't swing, I want to try and recast Hogak, but we're basically dead on board here with the 3 in the air. There's basically no way for us. We trade for the Lurrus. I think that attack was incorrect, but it still ends up winning us the game, because Hogak does nothing because of this Caracas. Yeah. Like, we can't do enough damage. I didn't bother returning Hogak here because it does nothing due to Caracas. We could potentially tax him 1 mana, but it's not going to matter when we're dead in 2 turns. We just need to try and get as much damage down as possible, but we're just dead on board, so unless we can dredge into a Narcomoeba, the game is over. And we do hit the Narcomoeba, so I'm like, oh, okay. But then he has the plough for the Narcomoeba, because I was like, oh, okay, if you do the maths, he's actually dead next turn unless he's got something to stop us. But it turns out he does not. And I just scoop there, I believe, because I'm just dead on board to the Insectile Aberration. So that was game 2. It doesn't say that I conceded, but I just scooped because there's nothing I could do. But yeah, we could have potentially got him there if he didn't have that Swords to Plowshares, but he played that game really well. That was really tight play by him. We are on the play. And I'm like, this hand's amazing as long as he doesn't have Soul Guide Lantern. Or do something like Force of Will Putrid Imp into Wasteland. This hand's really solid. Oh yeah, I lead with Putrid Imp. This was interesting. I thought about this a lot. But I was like, if he wastes the Force, I play Putrid Imp, and then my land gets wastelanded, I'm basically doing nothing. What I'd rather have is play Putrid Imp, have it, because normally I'd just play out the Force. I wouldn't even think about it. I'd just play out the Lion's Eye Diamond in the Force. But because of the way things were, I was like, if I go Lion's Eye Diamond, it gets forced, I play Putrid Imp, he wastes me. It's not good because we just have to slow Dredge with Thugs and it's very easy for us to lose. I wanted to be able to keep that explosiveness, and then if he wastes me I can just whatever. Well, one, I might draw a land for the turn, that's one thing, and also the other thing is even if I don't, he'll have no lands, he won't be able to daze me, I can just crack LED flashback looting. So this is not something that I do very often, but because of the way the hand was and the fact we only have one land, I think it was actually correct to play out the Putrid Imp first, and it ends up paying off in this game because I don't think he was expecting that. Because normally if you play out Putrid Imp first, it means that you don't have an LED. So he lands, ponders. I don't know whether he ponder shuffles or not. I think he does. But anyway, I'm pretty happy with drawing that land because that means we pretty much win. Also means that Oxvagonus does stuff if we dredge into it. But it also means we're protected by days on the flashback. So he doesn't have the Force of Negation, which was my one fear in that situation, but I'm not going to wait around, I'm just going to go for it. And this protects us from days, which is really nice. We hit one Narcomoeba, not ideal, but it will give us 3 zombies, and we've got 1 therapy. It's better than nothing. I think I name Dreadhorde Arcanist here, because it's like the one card that I'm afraid of. Oh no, I named Brainstorm. Okay, I'm just scared of him. I wasn't really afraid of... Yeah, I guess Dreadhorde Arcanist is not too much of a problem when I have Icarid coming back and I'll have like 6 zombies. Yeah, I just didn't want him cantripping into something that'll... Oh, I can see whether the ponder shuffles. So, yeah, he chose to shuffle on that ponder. He said, I guess he needs explosives. Yeah, explosives is probably worth it, but also sometimes it just does nothing. Just a dead card. So he ponder shuffles again, so I'm feeling quite happy because that means he's probably not found a... Oh, and he just scoops. He scoops it up there. Yeah, so he ponder shuffles, doesn't see anything, doesn't have any threats, sees that I'm just going to make 6 zombies and attack him for 9 next turn, and that's the end of the match. Yeah, so that was interesting games. I think playing the Putrid Imp out first, while he didn't have the Wasteland, I think that was a very important play that it doesn't come up very often, but that was I think quite crucial that game. Against Zab 11 was my round 6 match. Oh good, he sends me a message, which means I can click that. I tend not to reply to these messages, not that I don't care, I just prefer not to interact. So the opening hand wasn't keepable, this hand's also not keepable against the Delver deck, so I mull it. This hand's not keepable either. This hand's good, this hand does stuff. So I put, I mean it's not great, but I mean it's the closest thing to keepable we've seen. So I bottom like that, and I lead with careful study, which I believe gets force of negation. So I'm like, sure. He wastes me and I'm wanting to end my own existence, especially since we don't draw a land here. But he misses a land drop, which I'm happy about, and then we hit a land. So I was tempted here. You can make the argument to just break through X is 0, but I actually don't like that very much. Oh, I actually do that. But it just gets forced, so I'm actually kind of happy about that, because I didn't really like it, and then we draw a dead card. He ponders and chooses not to shuffle, which means we're probably dead. He plays Delver and passes. Draw another breakthrough. We make the same play again, knowing that if he's got a counter, we'll just counter it. There's no point trying to wait for a second land. He flips a Force of Will off the top, and I'm like, okay, this game's probably over. But we will... Oh, we don't actually do anything, yeah, because we just lose our last land. And we know he's got a Force in hand, it's all a bit pointless. Yeah, we just got a bit bodied this game, like 3 forces in a daze. It's not happening, you know what I'm saying. We get Thoughtseized here. So he knows hands that. But we draw a Faithless Losing, and I actually cast this here. I just prefer that a bit to therapying myself, and it resolves. So we can play Confluence and a Putrid Imp, which is actually pretty good. But the problem is we're getting hit for 3 each turn. So at this point we still don't know which Delver variant this is. He has dead weight for the Putrid Imp, which means it's probably Bug Delver. We're not out of the game here. We can dredge into Narcomoebas and get enough zombies with Bridge from below if we get good dredges. Whoops, so I did that a bit quick. So I attacked with Icarid, cast Cabal Therapy for the graveyard with Icarid. Oh right, I cast Cabal Therapy, I dredge, I cast Cabal Therapy on them. They exile Force with Force. I attack with Icarid, then I cast Cabal Therapy from the graveyard, naming Dreadhorde Arcanist, thinking this is Grixis Delver. And he reveals 2 Abrupt Decays, which he can't cast. So we're actually not in a terrible spot here, but we need to hit some Narcomoebas pronto. And I think we brick on dredges or something silly. Oh no, we don't brick on dredges, so we're not out of the game yet. We swing, get a zombie. The problem is that he can, if we need to hit 2 Narcomoebas, because he can just decay 1 Narcomoeba if we hit 1. we don't hit an Archimedes, so we are just dead on board, so we scoop. So we know it's bugged Delver. We do the sideboarding we've been doing, taking out Breakthrough Ichrid and Street Wraith for 3 Leyline of Sanctities. We are on the play. So this hand's just great. This is just awesome. We're protected from spell bombs and we've got loads of loot spells. This hand's just excellent. Gets Force of Negation. I play out the Cavalry Study there just in case it gets Force of Negation, because playing out the looting, if it gets Force of Negation, if it's his only force, means we won't be able to flash it back. It's bad if we get wasted, then wasted again, and then we draw a Cephalid Colosseum. That's when it's bad, but apart from that, it's pretty much fine. Like, because we got the second land, it doesn't really matter. Normally you'd want to play out the looting, just in case you... because if you draw a Cephalid Colosseum off it and then you get wasted, you can still cast the Careful Studies off the Colosseum, but because we've got a second land it doesn't really matter, so I just try to play around Force of Negation there. We cast Looting, and I think we cast Putrid Imp here, because I'm fine if it gets dazed. Did he shuffle the Ponder? Chooses to not shuffle with Ponder. So it's possible he has something good, but he doesn't counter the Putrid Imp, so I'm not too concerned. He's got a Caracas. He's got the Spell Bomb, so I'm very happy that I've got this Leyline of Sanctity. And he passes the turn. I think I swing, discard both the Grave Troll, sack to Therapy, name like Force of Will or something, and then cast the Careful Study. I just want the Careful Study to resolve. I'm not too concerned about losing the Putrid Imp. Oh, it gets Veiled. I'm okay with that. I did think that was something that could happen, but at least I'm not getting Spell Pierced here. If he wants to force me, I'm okay with it, and we hit the Ox Begona, so this game's pretty much over now. So 2 Alchemy triggers Pot's turn. Mishra's Bauble's bugged in that it will reveal cards, not Mishra's Bauble, sorry, Urza's Bauble. It says look at a card in someone's hand, but it will reveal them if you target yourself, which is not the best. So we can use Ox to eat all of the artifacts out of our graveyard to shrink the Tarmogoyf. However, I think what I do here is I just sack Ichrid to Cabal Therapy, naming Daze, just because I don't want the Ox to get dazed. And I see that he's got a second Spell Bomb, so we know that he's on a lot of Spell Bombs. At least 2. So Leyline of Sanctity is really working overtime in this game. So we just play Ox and we just go crazy, I think. We'll just fast forward that. Yeah, so Ox hits a bunch of stuff. I sack some zombies to Cabal Therapy, take all the cards out of his hand. I end with a board like this. Just fast forwarding through that because it's not very interesting. He's got no cards left in his hand now, except a Nihil Spell Bomb. And he will scoop here. or he'll take the damage for some reason. God only knows why. It's like 30 damage overkill. So, time for game 3. So this is a mulligan. Can't seem to get this chat to open up, but whatever. This is a keeper. I keep this, I expect. But I don't think we are in a good spot this game. He baubles, draws a card. I think we just go for it here because I think he did not ponder shuffle. I think we get Force of Negation. I speak to him in chat and I'm like, because of the ponder shot, the ponder didn't shuffle, he kept, sorry. And because of that I thought, well, he probably has a nihil spell bomb, so I'm just going to go for it. And I even say in chat, I'm like, I thought you had that, so I just went for it. Yeah, I assumed you had that, so I just went for it. Yeah, because he chose to not shuffle with the ponder, so I'm like, what does he have? Probably a nihil spell bomb on top. It doesn't pay off. We end up losing. We just hardcast an alchemy. We just want info really here. Even though it's game 3, I might end up playing him later. If I manage to top 8. But I basically accepted my fate at this point. But we were 5-0 going into this round, so yeah, it was about time we were due a loss. His hand's nothing, but it doesn't matter because he can just loot spell bombs. I think that hand's still a keep. I think we just got a bit unlucky there. But sometimes you like with Lurrus, you can't really play around spell bombs. That's the main problem with Lurrus. But I think everybody's pretty aware that Lurrus is going to get banned. And then I draw a looting, and I just loot, and I scoop. Alright, so round 7 against Dead Money 12, I'm on the play. He reveals Zirda, which is good because I've teched my sideboard for Zirda. I also know I need a good hand to beat Zirda, so I keep mulling. And this is a good hand. This is what I mean when I talk about the hands where you want a bottom Street Wraith. Like, keeping the Street Wraith here is just wrong as far as I'm concerned. Your biggest concern is bricking on dredges rather than anything else, so I'd always bottom the Street Wraith there. Lion's Eye Diamond resolves, so I just assume I'm going for it. I mean, I assume he doesn't have anything because he's on Zirda, but it actually turns out I'm just going to auto-play this. I do my thing. I actually don't hit any Narcomoebas here, which had me quite concerned. But he cracks a fetch, and then plays an Astrolabe, which tells me that this is the Bant Zirda deck. Thankfully, he doesn't go off on turn 1, though the Bant list tends to be a bit slower. I swing at him. I name Grim Monolith, I think. Because I only have 2 therapies, and if he's got both monoliths, I want to be able to Hit them both. Oh, actually I had more than one therapy I had. How many therapies did I have? Oh, I named Grim Monolith, then I named Teferi because it was the best card in his hand. And then that won me the game. Okay, so he's on the play in game 2. I do my sideboard plan of bringing in all of the Dread Returns and the Archon. I keep this hand because... Why do I keep this hand? It has a lot of good top decks, is why I keep this hand, I assume. A lot of draws are good. And if Lion's Eye Diamond resolves, that's great. But it doesn't resolve, which sucks. They've got so many ways to turn 1 me, I'm inclined just to try and keep something that might turn 1, even though they've got Force of Will. Then again, this is the Bant Zirda deck, which doesn't turn 1 as much. Maybe it was an aggressive keep, but I feel like it was correct in that situation. Especially since any top deck land makes this hand pretty good still. So I'm a bit concerned at this point because I'm like, oh snap, he's got Grim Monolith. I'm just hoping I can draw a land, and thankfully I do draw a land. It's also important to know we have 15 15 mana sources in the deck with both the petals in the deck. So evidently he doesn't have Karn, or he'd have played it. That's important to note. And he's only got 2 cards left in hand. So he could potentially have comboed off there, but obviously he doesn't have a payoff, which means he doesn't have Karn. So I think his hand's probably something like Counter Magic or what have you, I'm not entirely sure. So I'm feeling pretty okay right now because I can get Icarus back. Oh, I looked up the Bant Zirda lists and they tend not to have too much grave hate, so I'm feeling pretty confident right now. Plough's Icarus, but that's an irrelevance here thanks to the fact we have Grave Troll. So we end up sacking that, making a Hogak. Taking Force of Will, which is the last card, which we, I'm not sure whether we were aware of that. I don't think we were. So he can't cast Force on the Hogak, which is fine, we just sacrifice. I'm just trying to maximise the number of cards in the graveyard at this point. Oh, I Cabal Therapy myself and take the Cabal Therapy out of my hand just to make loads of zombies this turn with Hogak. Yeah, I just want to put as much power on the board as possible, so I do a bunch of stuff. I think I Dread Return a Grave Troll. And that puts an end to the game. Oh, I don't even bother reanimating the Hogak. Why didn't I reanimate the Hogak? There must have been a reason I didn't reanimate the Hogak. Can't think what it is. But anyway, this puts an end to the game. Oh, I think maybe I misclicked, but it was irrelevant at that point. The game was over because he didn't top deck anything that won him the game. So that was quite lucky. That was quite quick. I felt quite comfortable in that matchup with the sideboard plumbing. So this is against the Zookeeper, who reveals a Lurrus at the start of the game. So this hand's a snap keep, obviously. This hand's a slam dunk. It doesn't get much better than this. I just play out all my artifacts. I cast Faithless Looting, cast Lotus Petal. I don't bother going for the breakthrough here, just because we have Ox, so having access to both lands is pretty useful here. Also, if the breakthrough bricks, it's not very good. This gives us a better chance of breakthrough not bricking, because we'll dredge and then we'll discard, so we'll have a guaranteed dredger and we'll be deeper into the deck, so we're more likely to hit a second dredger, basically. That was the reason I didn't do that there. No other reason, just concern about bricking. So if we'd have cast breakthrough last time, we'd have just bricked. Whereas now we're going to see me break through crack lines, eye diamond for red, I think. Or maybe I just cast Cabal Therapy first. Yeah, I think I do, because I don't want the breakthrough to get forced or something. And he's got a hand of no interaction, so I just go for it. And I keep chaining, I think. Yep. And basically I reanimate Ox of Agonis, take every relevant card out of his hand. Not much more to say here. This game pretty much ends this turn, unless he's put a Terminus on top. I think I deliberately leave the Hogak in the graveyard. I put a bunch of power on the board, enough to force him to have to Terminus. I take the Brainstorm out of his hand. I take anything out of his hand that allows him to Terminus at instant speed, basically. Because my thoughts is he's probably put a Terminus. If he has a Terminus, he's put the Terminus second card down, because he kept not cracking the bauble, which was somewhat confusing me. Like, why wouldn't you crack the bauble at the end of this turn? And it's because he obviously put Terminus second card down. He wanted to have the Terminus crack in my upkeep, but that's fine. I'm just not going to play into that. I'm going to deliberately play around that. I'm going to make enough power that it's lethal, and then I'm going to leave the Hogak in the graveyard, so if he has a Terminus I can just get back the Icarids and then put a Hogak into play and then hope the game ends. So yeah, he cracks the bauble. This is in line with him having a Terminus. So yeah, he reveals Terminus. And he puts everything on bottom, but it's okay because I deliberately played around that. So what happens here is I'm going to be able to play all the Icarids, play out a Hogak. Oh, I actually don't go for a Dredge yet. Oh yeah, because I only have 10 cards left in deck and there's not really much point. In fact, maybe I don't even return the Hogak here. Maybe I just swing with everything. I think I can't remember what. I think it doesn't really matter either way at this point. I still have the Hogak available to me if I need it the turn after. He plows one of the Icarids, but he's still taking lethal next turn. This means that I won't have to return any creatures, he just scoops. So I know he's on the Lurrus Miracles list. So I look up Lurrus Miracles lists and they run Soul Guide Lantern and sometimes a Crypt, but not like enough. Any of the lists I find, there's not like multiple Crypts, there's only one, and then one's like a Soul Guide Lantern, so they have like one Crypt on one Soul Guide Lantern. And when you've got a 50-50 chance of the Leyline of Sanctity just being useless, I didn't see the point of that. So what I did was I just sided out Breakthrough, Street Wraith, for the Oko and a Petal, because the aim is just to try and sort of go fast. They only have 4 forces. The Petal helps cast Oko. That was the idea anyway. Also, they don't have any surgical, so Street Race not much use. Breakthrough's generally the card they take out. So he opens with Soul Guide Lantern, which is just terrible for me. But we do have the Oko, so I'm like, okay, we've got a game plan here. We can Oko his Soul Guide Lantern and hope to do something, but we don't have any red sources, so we'll have to try and draw a red source. So we just go to end step discarding a card. We discard the Grave Troll to hand size, because there's no point playing out a land at this point. Hopefully we can get him to crack the Soul Guide Lantern. He draws a card with his bauble. Oh, we dredge the Grave Troll. This is us trying to get him to crack the lantern, I think. We could have possibly tried to go for a draw here, but I think I like trying to get him to crack the lantern. And then after he plays a Lurrus, we can hopefully Oko the Lurrus. We cast a... So we casted an Archimedes there and it got forced pitching. Did it get forced? What happened there? Oh no, we Cabal Therapied him, naming Force of Will. He's doing Lurrus Bauble shenanigans. I'm not feeling like we've got much of a chance to win this game unless we draw a red source and somehow miraculously our Oko resolves. This was sort of our opening here, but we cannot find that red source that we need for the Oko, sadly. If we could, that would be great. So we just swing. We don't really want to block the Lurrus here. And we go through a bunch of turns of... I'm going to hide the sideboard now, we don't need to see that anymore. He cantrips, he replays Soul Guide Lantern, exiles our graveyard. I'm pretty much just trying to play for information at this point. Hopefully top deck a land. But he's like putting Brainstorms on top of Mystic Sanctuary, and we can't draw a red source to save our life to cast this Oko. It's actually very unlikely to have 3 lands and all of them to be Cephalid Colosseums. Like, that's really unlucky. Like, you're not guaranteed to hit the 3rd land, but by the time that you hit the 3rd land with the mana base, you're like very likely to have a red source. So we were getting quite unlucky here. He's just cantripping, we're just drawing nothing. We literally can't do anything here. So this isn't very interesting. We're just getting locked out of the game by Lurrus and Soul Guide Lantern. We discard a Grave Troll to hand size. He just cracks Soul Guide Lantern EOT. Replace Soul Guide Lantern. We keep not drawing a red source. I pack it in a couple of turns after we would keep not drawing red sources, because we're like, oh, he's almost guaranteed. Like, if he's red elemental blasting Narcomoebas, he's obviously got more interaction going on in his hand to be doing that. I'm not sure I even want to reveal the Oko at this point. And yeah, I think we just scoop there. We've had enough. We're not winning this game. Yeah. That was going too disappointing. So I'm on the play. This is my 7. This hand's a bit awkward because it's got 2 Narcomoebas that you don't want in the hand, but I mean it's got Lion's Eye Dome and it's got Faithless Looting. It doesn't have a Dredger, but I mean this hand's basically the nuts if you draw a Dredger. I couldn't see myself mulling this. Like, yeah, we could potentially try and mull and get crazy Grave Troll stuff, but I mean against Miracles, this has to be a keep, right? It's possible he just has Grave Hate and will lock us out the game though, so let's see what happens here. Lion's Eye Diamond will resolve, which makes me think, okay, he's probably got Grave Hate. and we discard 2 cards. We could have just cracked the Lion's Eye Diamond here, but I mean the hand's so gas I don't really want to. And also we've already got 2 Narcomoebas in hand, so our odds of hitting the 3rd Narcomoeba in order to do that aren't great. He plays out 2 Baubles and a Tormod's Crypt, which really sucked. I'm like, oh. He says, if you Oko me, I will be very upset. And I make a comment that he's drawn one of his 2 pieces of Grave Hate in his 7 both games. Because he kept a 7 card hand. And he had Grave Hate on turn 1 both games. So, yeah. Yeah. I don't like when people make snarky comments in chat like, if you have X, I'll be annoyed. And it's like, well, you've got your Grave Hate. How many copies of that do you realistically have in the deck? Not very many. Your odds are lower than mine. But it happens. I tend not to comment on it unless the opponent comments on it. While I went looking, you didn't really. You cast an Arkham's Astrolabe and you kept on your 7 both games. But whatever. It happens. This is our winner anyway. We can still potentially top 8 if we've got good tiebreakers. But I basically just accepted that this game's over at this point. He has Veil for that. And he's going to cast Lurrus next turn most likely. And yeah, the game's pretty much over at this point. We can't beat this lock. He's drawing like 3 cards a turn. This is the problem with Lurrus, if you don't have Leyline of Sanctity, but as I said, we can't really bring Leyline of Sanctity in because he's got 1 Crypt, 1 Soul Guide Lantern. Like half the time it's just going to be a worthless card to bring in, and we're still going to get locked out by Lurrus. And the other half will be fine, but it's a 1 in 60 chance. It's not worth bringing 3 cards in from your sideboard because of the 1 in 60 they have Tormod's Crypt. It's crazy. Like, please don't sideboard like that in Dredge. I see people bringing in often. I just scooped the Entreat off the top. I can't beat 2 Angels. But yeah, I see lots of people bringing in like 3 or 4 Nature's Claims when your opponent has 2 cages. Like, come on, guys, it's not that deep. It's easier just to think they don't have it. Like, you'll end up keeping subpar hands because you've got a Nature's Claim in it, and then you'll just lose because you don't dredge. You'll keep a hand that's just like looting, dredger, Nature's Claim, other cards that do nothing, land, and then you'll just loot and you won't hit a second loot spell, and then you'll just have a Nature's Claim that's useless because they won't have their cage, and then you'll just lose slow dredging because they'll play like, I don't know, something stupid that exiles your bridges, or they kill their own creature and you won't be able to get their slow dredging. They'll just kill you as stupid idiots and you'll feel like a moron. So yeah, don't over sideboard. It's the biggest mistake people make with this deck, but we got unlucky there, we got punished. So I managed to top 8 on Breakers, very lucky. I was actually the highest rated 6 and 2, which put me in 6th on the standings. We were against Arkhan, who was 7 and 1 in Swiss, only losing to us. So he gets the revenge match. Arkhan sent a message. He was saying he should be on the play because he was higher rated. This is true. However, we are on Magic the Gathering Online, and it does not work like that. So as much as I have sympathy for him, that's just how it goes. These are some interesting games actually. I think they're arguably more interesting because we mull all the way to 4 here. Game 1, not seeing any keepable hands before this. And we Cabal Therapy them. I think we named Force of Will. And we hit because we're gods at the game. So he's got Force and Daze, which is really useful to know. But however, he's got a Wasteland, which sucks. But I mean, we couldn't really do anything else. What are we going to... The other option is just we play Gemstone Mine and pass. It seemed better to try and take the force out of his hand. I make a joke about doing nothing turn 1 because of the Modo putting me on the play when he should have been on the play. So we draw, and what did we draw? Narcomoeba, not good. I'm feeling pretty down. Oh, I just go for it. I'm just like, well, he's got a daze. I can try and draw a second land, and I can try and draw a second land, but even if I draw a second land, I'll only be able to cast it X is 1, X is 0 anyway, or else it will get dazed. So it's basically exactly the same thing, because right now he can't daze me. So if I just go for it now and hope to draw a Dredge and discard it and just slow Dredge for the rest of the game, because maybe that'll be good enough game 1. It's basically the same as waiting, trying to draw another land and then playing into the daze, because I'll just have to X as 0 with a second land anyway because of the daze. So I just went for it, but he managed to find the force, which super sucks. And yeah, we play. He plays a Mother of Runes, so we know his hand is Tundra, Wasteland. He's played Mesh with Bulb. So we draw Graveshore, which is good. We're going to try and discard our Grave Troll by sacrificing this Narcomoeba we played so that we can use Cephalic Colosseum, and it manages to resolve, so we're just hoping he doesn't manage to find a second whatever pond, second Wasteland, and he doesn't, which is really good for us, and now we're hoping we don't brick on Dredges. He names Cabal Therapy with Meddling Range, which kind of sucks, and we do in fact brick on Dredges, so, but we managed to find Ox of Agonis, which is great. Ox of Agonis really comes into its own. It's situations like this where having Ox in the deck is really, really good, because we can just keep casting Ox and keep casting Ox and keep casting Ox, and hopefully eventually that just gets there. So he's going to cast his Lurrus, do Lurrus shenanigans, return Bauble, do nonsense. We are just going to get back Icarid, do some dredging. We swing because we're happy to trade Lurrus for Icarid for losing one of our bridges. That seems like a good trade to me. So this is almost definitely going to get dazed. I'll be very surprised if it doesn't. But we're fine if it gets dazed. And it does get dazed, which is a-okay by me. But we are on very low life here. We are on exceptionally low life. And he has 2 Mother of Runes, which is a problem because he can just give us protection from black. So what's going on here is I'm hoping that we can get enough creatures of different colour to be able to block and not die, and then we can just make enough zombies with Icarids dying end of turn. That's the plan right now. So I can't block either of those, so things aren't looking very good. We end up having to exile most of the cards in our graveyard in order to return this. Ox of Agonis, we keep the bridges though. Oh, we actually had to exile one of the bridges and he just has a daze anyway, which just forces our scoop. We can't win the game at this point. He's just going to give Pro Black to both his creatures next turn. So we managed to lose game 1, which isn't very good because Arkan's a good player, so I'm feeling pretty down at this point, but I'm happy because my aim going into this tournament was simply to top 8. I've never top 8'd an MTGO Legacy tournament before, so my aim was to top 8. However, we lose game 1. Obviously I still want to do as well as possible, but I'm quite happy at this point I've achieved my goal. So we are on the play in game 2, and this hand is bananas. This hand's amazing, unless he has his one-of Soul Guide Lantern, in which case this isn't great, but I'm quite happy with just playing this out, and he forces, which I'm fine with. I can't remember whether I just go for it here. No, I don't go for it. My concern of him having a second force or a force of negation is greater than my thinking he might have his 1 in 60. Also, Putrid Imp's just a really good card. He's going to kill our Putrid Imp with a lightning bolt. We are going to go dredging. MTGO is being garbage. We hit Oxyvagonus, which is great. At this point I'm quite happy just to play a land, Cabal Therapy, crack LED for red, which is what we should do here. And I believe that resolves. And this will prompt a concession very quickly. I'm just going to set this to autoplay. We get back an Ox. What? Yeah, so Ox makes a bunch of Narcomoebas, and we sack the we cast Ox, dredge a bunch of times, get more Narcomoebas, sack the Ox to Cabal Therapy them, threatening to cast the Ox again off of the other land, and he just scoops rather than reveals what his hand was. So we win game 2 quite quickly. I'm quite happy with that. We punished him after losing game 1. However, we're on the draw in game 3, which I'm quite concerned about. So game 3, this is my hand. I believe I keep this because this seems pretty solid. It plays around days. It's got Putrid Imp. Obviously it loses to Soul Guide Lantern, but I mean, so does everything else. Drawing Breakthrough here is absolutely awesome. Play out the Pedal. Play out the Putrid Imp. And we're not going to crack the Pedal here. Pedal's best being left around. Oh, do I? Okay, maybe I just go for it. Maybe I'm like, whatever, I don't care if you... Oh, I see, yes, I can sacrifice the Putrid Imp to Cabal Therapy him no days. Wow, I'm smarter than even I knew. So he reveals a hand which can actually screw me over quite hard here, because he's got Wasteland and Force Negation, so I can't really go for it. Like if I crack and try to cast Breakthrough, he's in quite a weird spot. This is actually, because this is one of the things that punish us. We sacrifice Putrid Imp to name Days so that we can try and go off this turn. However, it turns out he has a Force of Negation, which isn't a card that we'd have named anyway, unless we have the read that he's got a Force, and the Force is Force of Negation because he didn't counter Putrid Imp, which could be a read, but more likely is he has Daze, and he just doesn't want a Daze because we've got a Lotus Petal. But Force of Negation's another read, but I wouldn't have had that read. I feel like... Also, forcing him to Force of Negation isn't even the end of the world. He does lose 2 cards for that, but we don't want to just play into this Force of Negation, so we're in somewhat of a tough position and we don't want him to have a top deck Daze. So he wastes us, I believe. So he only has... We know that the card that he drew... We know that the card that he drew isn't a non-land card. I mean, isn't a spell, because he'd have flipped the Delver. So it's probably a land. So what he could have done there is he could have Meddling Maged and named Breakthrough, which would have been a play, but then we'd have Careful Study. But so we're in a somewhat interesting spot here, and I still don't want to just play into the Breakthrough. What I want to do is I want to save the Breakthrough as long as possible, and I want to be able to Cabal Therapy him and then cast Breakthrough afterwards. That's the plan. Like, we want to be able to use this Lotus Petal to get some value out of one of these two cards in our hand. And he plays Goblin Crater Maker, which is really bad for us because it can exile our bridges. So this is our one sort of opening here. But luckily we hit Narcomoeba, which is exactly what we need, because any later than this turn, the Crater Maker would be able to sacrifice and take our bridges off us. So this is absolutely perfect. And we know that all three cards in his hand, we know that he's got Swords to Plowshares, Meddling Mage, and Force of Negation. So if he'd have played out the Meddling Mage, he wouldn't have actually been able to cast the Force of Negation, and we would have been able to cast the other card that we have in our hand. So it was somewhat in a catch-22, but by us like saving this Lotus Petal and not playing into the Force of Negation, we are able to beat this Goblin Crater Maker, which would normally be a big problem because he'd be able to loop it with Lurrus every turn. Holding off on things like that isn't... You don't have to cast your spells into Force of Will. Like, sometimes that's a really powerful thing that the deck can do, but most of the time that's not needed. Yeah, so here we get to we've got another Cabal Therapy in the graveyard, so we actually now get to take the Swords to Plowshares out of his hand, and I think we take the plow and then play a Hogak, and this is basically unbeatable unless he draws a second plow. Plus the fact we have Icarids in our graveyard coming back. So I'm feeling really comfortable. He flips Ponder, yeah, he flips both of his Delvers, which really sucks, but I mean we do have a Narcomoeba to block. My one concern is that he's found a Hogak here, that's my big concern. And he ponders and then he brainstorms. He plays a land. He swings. Swings with both Delvers, so he ponders into brainstorms. So we know that the last card he might have in hand is a Meddling Mage. That's the only thing we know. And I actually make a mistake because I think he still has the Meddling Mage later, but actually he shuffled it away. So he forced a block, and I was expecting him to sack the Crater Maker to stop giving us a zombie there, but he doesn't. Well, so we bring back both Icarids, and then it's the question of do we want to swing. And what I'm going to do here, I expect, is force him to sack by sacking an Icarid to Cabal Therapy. Excuse me, I've got a cough, hopefully it's nothing serious. So I sack the Icarid, which will prompt that, and then I name Meddling Mage with Cabal Therapy, which in hindsight I should have probably thought about. Maybe he's brainstormed away the Cabal Therapy because he has a brainstorm in hand. The reason to sack the Icarid there is because if you don't, he can block sack, so you end up losing damage in combat. I mean, this way he can block sack on a zombie anyway, so it's basically the same thing, but you get to have a Cabal Therapy out of it as well. Well, I guess it's the same, kind of. It just forces his play, because if he doesn't want to lose the Crater Maker there, then we get guaranteed zombies before combat. Like maybe he has something else he wants to use in hand. They're sort of forcing him to sack if he doesn't want to give us zombies. It's just sort of slightly marginally better to do it that way. It lowers the opponent's choices, which is good for us. A lot of this deck is about lowering your opponent's choices. Sort of, it's kind of an aggro deck. You just want to sort of put your opponent in an awkward position. So I'm feeling really confident right now. Unless, even if he draws the Soul Guide Lantern, like he needs like exactly Soul Guide Lantern plus Plow in order to win the game there, and he brainstorms and he doesn't find it and he scoops. So that's really good. We are now into top 4. I had another rematch in the top 8, this time against Zirda 11, who I know's on Bug Delver from before. This hand's a keep because it's got 2 loot things at a Colosseum. I felt quite happy with this hand. He takes the Careful Study. I expected this Putrid Imp to get dazed, however it resolved, which I was quite surprised about. So I thought maybe he has a Wasteland, which he does, and he Wastelands me. Which isn't great, but we have Putrid Imp that's just like the best thing to have if you've got nothing else going on. It swings, it's a creature, you can't brick on dredges. So I just pitched the whole hand here basically. Even though there's no actual reason to pitch the Ox, I still do it just to make him scared of me potentially getting it back. But we've not got a Dread Return in the deck, so it's an irrelevance. And I get very lucky here and I hit a Cabal Therapy and Hogak, so that I'm able to return Hogak here, and this prompts the concession quite quickly, I believe. I named Daze just because I didn't want the Hogak to get dazed. And I cast the Hogak and I think he scoops. Yeah. Game 2. So we mulled that hand because it only had 1 source, and then I see this, which I don't really like, but I feel somewhat obligated to keep it because it's got looting, it's got... Like, I normally never keep something like this, but because of the Leyline of Sanctity stops him from looping Nihil Spellbomb, it also protects us from Thoughtseize, so I thought, okay, but I expected us to just get eaten by a bunch of counterspells, which I did. I mean, we could have potentially mulled here, but if he's got Grave Hate, we just lose. At least this potentially gives us an out, and if we draw well, we should be okay. But maybe this was a mulligan. This might have been a bit of a greedy keep. So we draw Faith of Ceasing, which I was happy about when it got Force of Negation, which is unfortunate. But we do have 4 lands, so next time we can loot through Days. It's annoying that that got Force of Negation because it means we have 1 less looting in the graveyard, and then he wastes us, which also stops us from flashing back and playing around Days. We'd have actually been okay if that wasn't a Force of Negation, I think. I accidentally crack LED by mistake, but it doesn't really matter here. We've only got 2 LEDs left in the deck and we're down to 6 already. Yeah, but we do hit a looting here, which is good. Ooh. Which is good. However, we loot with the LED and we hit no Narcomoebas. And then we're just dead on board. So that was frustrating. We got a tad bit unlucky there, but also our dredges were not very good. And sometimes that happens, that's just the deck. So, game 3. a mulligan. The first one only had breakthrough, it had nothing else to do. This is a mulligan again, only breakthrough. Now this is an interesting hand. This was what I kept. I have to bottom 3 cards. So I bottomed Cabal Therapy, Lion's Eye Diamond, and Mana Confluence, I believe. However, there is an argument there. Oh, I had to only bottom 2, sorry, but I bottomed a LED instead of a land, or a light. Yeah, it's possible I should have bottomed the land instead of the LED, because the LED ends up getting forced. My thoughts were, if I don't draw a dredger. Also, this helps to play around days, but I guess LED plays around days. But we get quite lucky here. Also, the other reason I kept the land was in case we draw like looting or something, we can cast it. I'm actually feeling pretty okay with the situation right now. But we're not getting very lucky. He has another force, which kind of sucks, but is okay actually. It happens. He wastes the Colosseum, that really sucks, but we're just not drawing dredges here. And bear in mind, we've got all of the dredges left in the deck. So he swings. We draw a Thug for the turn, which is pretty good, however we're taking a bunch of damage here. And Delver flips. We take the damage there because I didn't want to brick on dredges and then not be able to get anything back. So we dredge here, we hit an Archimedes, which is really good. I'm feeling pretty okay about this right now, provided he doesn't have a removal spell. So I block and I make Putrid Imp into a 2/2, which is a pretty cheeky play that you can do when you've got 5 cards in graveyard and 2 in hand. But we are not in a good spot right now. He's drawing a lot of cards per turn, and our dredges are not very good. We hardcast Thug and swing with Icarid because we're happy to trade that for the Lurrus. Also, we've got no bridges in the graveyard. He keeps cantripping. So yeah, I mean, given the fact that we didn't draw, I mean, we drew more lands, but we didn't draw and I go for I draw the Narcomoeba there instead of, I go for a draw there instead of dredging, because looking at the board I was like, well, given he's got a Delver and it's almost definitely going to flip because he's been cantripping, I want to be able to just try and draw a loot spell, and then that would potentially allow me to dredge enough that I'm likely to hit an Archimedes, because I only had 3 Narcomoebas left in deck. However, I actually draw an Archimedes off the top, which is somewhat getting maxed punished for that play. But I did see what I would have dredged anyway after the game, and it wouldn't have made a difference. Like, it would have bought us a turn, but it wouldn't have been good enough. Yes, there were a few things we could have done differently. We could have not kept the Leyline of Sanctity, but that was the whole point of the sideboard plan. We could have kept the other Lion's Eye Diamond instead of a land. Maybe that was correct. We ended up not drawing a dredger for a very long time. However, maybe having the Lion's Eye Diamond, and he did have, what, he had a Force of Negation and then he had a Force of Will. I feel like by the time we'd have gone off, he'd have found enough Force of Wills to force our breakthrough anyway. I don't know. I'll be interested to see what you guys think about that match. I think the main thing that went wrong was just that it took us too long to find a Dredge, and our draws weren't especially good. But that happens. That's the deck. I'd have still kept that hand again. My thoughts are maybe I should have kept the LED instead of a land. Yeah. But sadly we lost. That was top 4 we lost. But overall it went really well, and I was happy with how the deck ran. It ran really well. Annoying that we lost to this guy's Bug Delver list twice. I don't think Bug Delver's an especially bad matchup. I think we got a combination of he drew well, we got a bit unlucky, maybe we made some play mistakes, and he played very well as well. So yeah, that was the whole tournament. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know playing these replays isn't exactly ideal, but I didn't want to record it at the time. I didn't feel like it. I honestly didn't think I'd do very well either, which is the reason why I didn't record it. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching, and if you just do all the YouTube stuff, you know, the YouTube stuff.